All right, it's time to mock it up. This is Ryan Wilson's latest mock top 10. And no surprise at the top, it's always going to be Trevor Lawrence unless he's going for clickbait. Zach Wilson, number 2 to the Jets, the quarterback out of BYU. Dolphins going defense. Kyle Pitts, a tight end, going to the Eagles. The Lions finding Matthew Stafford's replacement in Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. And Mac Jones going to the Denver Broncos. I'm Chris Hassel, and I am pleased to be joined now by Ryan Wilson, who puts together a new mock for us each and every week. This is mock number 21. And so grateful that we are graced by the presence of Pete Prisco, who only does mock draft shows once or twice a year. So thanks for joining us, Pete. It's kind of an abbreviated version here, only 30 minutes on this mock draft Tuesday. But let's start at number 2, Ryan, because there's no question at number 1. The Jets. A lot of options on the table here. You could stick with Darnold. You could trade down. Why do you have him taking the quarterback out of BYU?
Yeah, I'm glad to have Pete on the show because I want to hear what he has to say on some of these picks. I know he probably has an opinion.
Yeah.
So Zach Wilson is a guy who had a fantastic 2020 season, got on everyone's radar with the way he played at BYU. I'm not convinced he's going to be the second overall pick, but as you point out, Chris, the Jets have a decision to make with their new coach, Robert Saleh. Stick with Darnold. Trade down. You can even trade down to 10 or 11 or 12 if you want to get a quarterback there, if there's one you like there, and get some additional picks. Or stay put and take an offensive tackle if that's what you want. Pair that offensive tackle with Mekhi Becton, last year's first-round pick, and move forward with Sam Darnold that way. I've gone with Zach Wilson here for the last few weeks. No trade downs in recent mock drafts. So they're going to go with the quarterback, going with a new quarterback. Sam Darnold hasn't had a consistent career to this point. If you don't think that's going to change, roll with Zach Wilson. Strong arm, moves really well in the pocket, incredibly athletic, and makes a lot of tight window throws. The level of competition, that will be the talking point as we get through this process.
I'm with you on Zach Wilson. I think the kid's got a chance to be really, really good. But we also said the same thing about Sam Darnold when he came out, which is why I think the Jets, Ryan, will stick with Sam Darnold. He's the perfect quarterback for that system. It's the 49ers system. It's all the on the move and get him outside the pocket and create things off that run game. I think I said before, even Robert Saleh was hired there, that there was a possibility maybe if they were going to move on from Sam Darnold that the 49ers would be the perfect spot for him. Well, now the offense came to him. It makes sense to keep him in it. If I'm the Jets, I'm trading this pick and adding extra picks, seeing if I could get something else to move down a few spots, or maybe even you mentioned it, down to number 10, because they need help in so many areas. Yes, Wilson's an interesting guy, an intriguing guy, but so is Darnold in that system. So I'd stay put and keep Sam Darnold.
All right, Jets could be in a position to trade down. So could the Miami Dolphins at number 3 overall. But Ryan, you have them standing pat this week. I know last week you had them trading back a little bit, but you have them going defense here at number 3. How do you sell Micah Parsons to this Dolphins fan base?
Well, if today's Twitter interactions are any indication, they hate it, and they hate it a lot. So I got to do a better sell job, I guess. Micah Parsons opted out, played at Penn State last year, incredibly athletic. He is sort of part of this new wave inside off-ball linebacker we've seen in the last 4, 5, 6 years, and that can come in right away and dominate and have that type of effect on a game. I've talked to scouts that aren't concerned at all that he didn't play in 2020. You have to go back to 2019 to watch him play. But look, in previous draft, and look, Pete was right about Tua and the fire in the belly. I laughed at him. Turns out he was right. I had the Dolphins going with a quarterback in a previous mock draft. We heard Chris Greer, the GM, come out and say that's not going to happen. So why not upgrade the defense if you have an opportunity at this point? You could go wide receiver if you're willing to take one this high. I don't know if you want to do that. Or even offensive lineman if you want to make Tua better protected and give him more time to throw in the pocket.
Yeah, I just think this is way too high for an off-the-ball linebacker. That's me. And I know, I can see where you're thinking here. You're thinking he's Patrick Willis. He's Devin White. He's, Devin Bush. He's one of those guys. But I just think with the way they're constructed there in Miami, it's too much value for that position. And I think there's other options. I would probably look at an edge rusher. Now, I know there's no real elite edge rusher, so that's concerning. Maybe wide receiver. And again, that's a little high. So I like your idea of trading back. There's going to be some quarterback needy team that might want to go to this spot. You move back and get extra picks, because I'm with you. As much as the Dolphins might be intrigued by a quarterback, I think they're sticking with Tua.
Ryan, you also have the Dolphins picking at number 18, sticking with that pick and going wide receiver there. A couple of other drafts, you had them going with the Heisman Trophy winner Devonta Smith at number 3 overall, but you have them getting another great Alabama wide receiver at 18 in Jalen Waddle.
So, look, Jalen Waddle probably shouldn't be there. He is that explosive. And he is so good that he was the number 4 receiver on this Alabama team last year that had 2 first-round picks. It's going to end up having 4 first-round picks. But here's the thing. We love these wide receivers so much every year. And I think they're going to get pushed down a little bit. It happened last year. Henry Ruggs ended up being the first guy going at 12. There could be a situation where Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith get pushed down a little bit because there'll be a run on quarterbacks and possibly a run on offensive tackles. And you could find yourself in a position if you're the Dolphins trying to help Tua out down the field and get an explosive playmaker like Jalen Waddle at 18. If he's there, you run to the board and take him. But that certainly is a possibility, but I like Jalen Waddle better than 18th overall.
I'm going to call a quick audible real quick. If you guys could pop up that top 10 from Ryan Wilson again. And Pete, tell us what you were telling us off air when you were going through Ryan Wilson's latest mock as it regards to Penei Sewell at number 4.
Look, he's been the slam dunk, number 1 tackle in Twitter draft land, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think there's a couple other guys that will push him, and that's not because he opted out either. I don't think these teams care. Guys I talked to don't care about anybody opting out at all. And they never care about guys who didn't play in the bowl games either. But I think it's just a matter of talent. There's a couple of other guys that are interesting. And you mentioned Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, another guy who opted out and didn't play. And Christian Darrisaw is a name that keeps coming up when I ask these scout and personnel guys to give me a tackle that might be the first tackle taken. So keep an eye on him. He's a good left tackle out of Virginia Tech. About 6'6", 315, can move. And there are some people, and Ryan will mention this, that have questioned whether he plays on every single play, but he's a darn good player with a lot of physical ability.
All right, let's move on to number 6 in the Philadelphia Eagles, head coach Nick Sirianni. And Ryan, we know that they're going to try to stick with Carson Wentz, going to try to make that work. So why not give him a big-time weapon at tight end?
That's right. And again, I say it every time we talk about the Eagles. It was weird the way they lost that Week 17 game. They were so intent on getting the number 6 pick. If they'd won, they'd had the 9th pick. So at the time, you think, okay, maybe they're interested in a quarterback. Clearly, that doesn't appear to be the case. So what do? You surround Carson Wentz with some weapons. You could also address the offensive line if you so chose. But I went with Kyle Pitts, the quote-unquote tight end, and I always say tight end in quotes because he is basically a pass receiver. Grown man, 6'6". He reminds me in terms of when he's out and running routes to Darren Waller. He doesn't block like Darren Waller, but that's okay. You ain't drafting him to block anyone. He takes over games. He's unstoppable at every level. And look, if Carson Wentz can't get better throwing the ball to Kyle Pitts, then maybe it's Carson Wentz. Maybe we need to figure out something else, a plan B that doesn't get Doug Peterson fired. But right now, Kyle Pitts at number 6 seems extremely high for a tight end, but if he's your best pass receiver on your board, take him there if you like him.
Yeah, it is high for a tight end, and I love Kyle Pitts. I think you mentioned that he's going to be Waller. That's exactly who he is. Can really stretch the field, become more like a wide receiver. But they have Dallas Goedert, and last year they had Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, and they still couldn't move the football. One of the reasons being their offensive line is bad. If I'm sitting there in this spot, I'm taking a big guy. I'm taking an offensive lineman. They need help up front. The best way to help your quarterback is to protect them. So I'd pass on the tight end here. It's a little high. Plus, it's a good tight end class. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this draft class you can get in the second round. And if we look at history, Kelsey, Kittle, those guys all come in the later rounds, and you can find these tight ends. So I wouldn't use this high a pick on Kyle Pitts.
Okay, let's move on to the Detroit Lions at number 7. And we've learned since your last mock draft, Ryan, that they're going to need a new quarterback, and you've got him going to North Dakota State and Trey Lance to replace Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, typically before the Matthew Stafford news, I would have them targeting a wide receiver. They're going to lose. Kenny Golladay is going to be a free agent, and so is Marvin Jones. So they would need to replace at least one of those guys. Now they also have to figure out the quarterback situation with new coach Dan Campbell. Trey Lance has so many things going for him in terms of physical tools. He played at a small school, North Dakota State, also home of Carson Wentz and Easton Stick, who are NFL quarterbacks. Played FCS, didn't play this year except for one showcase game, which is a weird sort of game to try to get a handle on who he is exactly. He also played in a run-heavy scheme at North Dakota State, but he's incredibly athletic. You can see him run here, has one of the strongest arms in the draft, makes a ton of good decisions. Their coaching staff put a lot on his plate, and he handled it and then some. There were no concerns about him not knowing what to do with the ball before and after the snap. Can he play right away? Probably not. So you need a bridge quarterback in Detroit. But if you like this guy, you like his athleticism, you like his upside, and I actually like him a little more than Justin Fields, I think at number 7, that makes a ton of sense.
This is like Bigfoot or Boogeyman to me because nobody's really seen him. I mean, there aren't any games of him this year. The one game he played, the showcase game, he was as average as can be. He wasn't that good. And he's got, he's got some skills. You mentioned it. He can move. He's athletic. He's got a good arm. His motion's a little funky. But the level of competition, as we always say, is a concern. But I'm not picking him in this spot over Justin Fields, and I don't love Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields has some issues as well, but I'm not taking him in this spot, particularly if you're the Lions. I think you need to get more of a sure thing. Now, nobody's ever a sure thing, but when you see a guy do what he did in the Big Ten for Justin Fields, and you see what Trey Lance did in that level, and particularly this year, that game, and Ryan, you've watched it. I know you've watched it. He was as average as can be in that game.
Sorry, I thought Ryan was going to follow. Go ahead.
He wasn't great.
Yeah, look, you look at the numbers, 42 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the last full season he played in 2019. But, of course, it's North Dakota State, and the last quarterback out of there, Carson Wentz, hasn't quite worked out for the Philadelphia Eagles. Ryan has 4 quarterbacks in his top 10. None of them are Justin Fields. Mac Jones going to the Broncos, and that would mean they're moving on from Drew Lock. Mac Jones, kind of the opposite of Drew Lock, Ryan. He doesn't have the arm strength. He doesn't really have the mobility, but he's got a lot of the other stuff.
Right. I thought you were going to mention he has a dad bod, and Drew Lock appears to be in shape. That would also be a concern. But here's the good news. Mac Jones is actually really good, but he was 6'2.5" today at the Senior Bowl. He has 9 3/4-inch hands. He has big hands, so nothing to worry about there. Pete can tell you the story about when he made fun of Drew Lock for having small hands at the Senior Bowl. He took it personally. No concerns with Mac Jones there. But here's what I love about Mac Jones. I know he's not athletic. He has above average arm strength. It's good enough. He makes all the throws, but he's smart. He knows where to go with the ball. He doesn't hold the ball in the pocket. I know he's throwing to wide open guys, but he hits them in stride consistently. And here's the other thing, and Pete, I'm interested to hear what you say on this. No one was having these concerns about arm strength and throwing to wide open guys last year with Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, he didn't have a great rookie season, but I think there's, behind Trevor Lawrence, the best prepared quarterback to come in and play right away, in my mind, based on what I saw this year, is Mac Jones.
I like him. I think he's accurate. I think he's smart. I think he knows where to go with the football. But he's got some of the same, things we said about Tua last year. It's easy to throw to those guys. I mean, they're open all the time. The offensive line is loaded with NFL guys. There's no pressure in your face. It's easy to play quarterback in that structure. And here's the problem with Mac Jones. And Mac Jones is a Jacksonville kid. I watched him. I've seen him in high school. I've watched him the whole entire way through his career. He doesn't do things off schedule a lot of the times. And this game in the NFL has become off schedule. You have to be able to get outside the pocket. I'm not saying you have to be Lamar Jackson and run around or Kyler Murray, but you have to be able to make throws on the move. Patrick Mahomes makes throws on the move. Aaron Rodgers makes throws on the move. Josh Allen throws on. You got to be able to get outside of the structure of the offense to make plays. And that's my only concern with Mac Jones. 25 years ago, Mac Jones, stand in that pocket and make the plays. I love him. It's just the game has evolved a little bit where you got to be able to get outside the pocket and make plays.
All right, one more pick here in the top 10. Ryan, you have the Dallas Cowboys going defense and cornerback Patrick Surtain. That secondary certainly needs the help.
Yeah, he was the best cornerback on the roster in 2019 at Alabama. And the Cowboys drafted Trevon Diggs, that Alabama cornerback, in the second round last year. So he'll reunite with his teammate there. He has all the tools. We know that. His dad played in the NFL for a long time. We know that. I like him just slightly less than Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech. Farley's a better athlete, doesn't have the polish that Surtain has from playing at Alabama, having his father's pedigree. And I think he immediately helps that Cowboys secondary, which at times was really hard to watch. He's long, he's physical, he can make plays on the ball. I just think he's 1B for me at cornerback, which isn't a bad thing. He's going top 10, just behind Caleb Farley, another player who opted out, as Pete noted. I would imagine, from what I've heard, and I'm sure what Pete heard, no one cares that Caleb Farley opted out. But I think Patrick Surtain came back, played at a high level. He's going to be a top 15 pick.
I think this would be a great pick for the Cowboys. I love Patrick Surtain. In fact, I think he's the #1 corner in this draft. I know Farley might be a little higher on some people's boards, but Patrick Surtain has that it factor. He's been around the game his entire life. His dad was a great corner. He plays with instincts, and I think he's going to be an outstanding Pro Bowl, All-Pro corner in his career. So if he was there at number 10 for the Cowboys, that would make a ton of sense.
All right, Pete, Ryan, hang tight. We are going to get to the teens and then the 20 through 32 in this draft. We're going to go quickly here over the next 15 minutes or so, find out where Justin Fields ends up in Ryan's latest mock and why Ryan says it is the perfect fit for the former Buckeye. We have Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft on CBSSports.com, taking a look at the teens. Devonta Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, going to the 49ers at number 12. Jamar Chase, boy, Vikings really adding at wide receiver a bunch of Tigers. Justin Jefferson last season, Jamar Chase in this mock, and Justin Fields to the Patriots at number 15. So let's get Ryan Wilson in here along with Pete Prisco. And Ryan, let's start with Devonta Smith. I'm surprised that he was able to slide that far in your mock draft to number 12. You've had him go as high as 3 to the Dolphins in other mocks, but boy, Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't have many excuses if they got him.
No, I like the idea of Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and then Devonta Smith. Jimmy G would be out of excuses at that point. I'd love to see how Kyle Shanahan would scheme that up. I mean, that would be a lot of fun to watch that offense. It is interesting. You mentioned Devonta Smith falling to 12. In part, I talked about it earlier, just wide receivers sometimes get pushed down on draft day. But today at the Senior Bowl, for the first time in as long as I can remember, Devonta Smith passed on being weighed. So that to me says he clearly doesn't weigh 175. I don't know if it matters. He's played in 13 games the last 3 years. Durability was not really a concern at Alabama, except the finger he hurt in the championship game, and that has nothing to do with how much he weighed. So I think he's an explosive player. He's my wide receiver 1 in this draft class, and it's a pretty tight bunch at the top 3. And I think he's going to do a lot of things well at the NFL, despite the fact that he's going to have to gain weight to get up to 175.
Yeah, he's an explosive player. There's a lot to like there. But history says receivers who are in the 170, 175-pound range don't usually have great success in the NFL. I mean, Steve Breston, I don't know if you guys remember him, out of Michigan, was about 170-pound, had a 1,000-yard season, then kind of faded away. Deshaun Jackson had some good years and got banged up and kind of faded away. Little guys who are thin and frail have problems with the jam, and so that's why there's concern about him. You put on the tape, there's so much explosive ability. He's got great hands, but again, competing against SEC corners, big difference in competing against NFL corners, and we saw it all weekend. Guys got banged around. The Bucks held and grabbed and mugged and everything else, and they got away with it. You have to get off of that in the NFL, and that's why there's concern with him at 170 pounds.
All right, there's another wide receiver going at number 14 to the Minnesota Vikings, Jamar Chase, who I believe we have on CBSSports.com. We have Chase ranked as the top wide receiver in this year's class. Ryan, boy, I guess the Vikings like what they saw from Jefferson. They want to add another one.
And the thing is, during the 2019 season, Jamar Chase opted out for 2020. 2019, Jamar Chase was better than Justin Jefferson at LSU with Joe Burrow and all the other playmakers they had there. Justin Jefferson, that'll be a hard act to follow if Chase ends up in Minnesota. And you could say, look, the Vikings need offensive line help. They need defensive line help, edge rush help. I get all that. But if Jamar Chase is sitting there, you certainly think about it. Sort of like the Cowboys last year took CeeDee Lamb, even though they didn't technically need CeeDee Lamb. Jamar Chase is an explosive player. He's not as explosive as Justin Jefferson. He's only 6 feet tall, but he plays much bigger than that. He catches everything you throw him. And I think Kirk Cousins would like to have one more playmaker to get the ball down to, given the way he played in that super high-powered offense in 2019 for LSU.
I love him as a receiver, and I think he's going to go higher than this. I don't think he's going to be there when the Vikings pick. But this would be a luxury pick for the Vikings. They have so many other needs, and I think they need to address those. I think you get a #1 home run threat last year in the draft in Jefferson. Now you got to start addressing some more needs on defense. I think they need to get a big guy, a down big guy. They've been pushed around a little bit at the line of scrimmage. They also need to get more help from the edge. They obviously tried to address that with Ngakoue. Didn't work out. They traded him away. So there's a couple other more pressing needs, and this would be a luxury pick, but I do love the player. I think Chase will be an NFL star.
All right, so we've already seen 4 quarterbacks go. All of them went top 9, and Justin Fields was not one of them. But, Ryan, you have them going number 15 to New England Patriots, and you say this would be a perfect fit for Fields. Why is that?
Well, I think Fields gives you a lot of what Cam Newton was supposed to give the Patriots this season, except he can throw the ball down the field. He's just as mobile, maybe more mobile at this point in their 2 careers when you compare them. And you're playing for Josh McDaniels, who I don't think is going to get a head coaching job. It doesn't appear. So he'll be back as offensive coordinator. And that team is not going to struggle again 2 years in a row. Bill Belichick will make sure that doesn't happen. They have a ton of cap room. And Justin Fields can grow into the job. Will he start right away? He probably shouldn't. There's certainly some issues with his game. I don't want to say he had a terrible season because he didn't. He started off red hot, had those bad outings against Indiana, then Northwestern, I think it was, got hurt in the bowl games. But I think there's a lot to like about what he does. He can be extremely accurate when he knows where to go with the ball. His arm strength isn't going to be Trevor Lawrence-like, but it's good enough, and we know he can run. I just wish sometimes he wouldn't run after his first read or second read isn't there. He needs to work on that. But again, if you put him in the right system, and we talk about it all the time, these young quarterbacks, put them in teams that are good as opposed to teams that are terrible, and they're going to have immediate success. And I think that's the situation with Justin Fields.
I will be astounded if Justin Fields is here at number 15. In fact, I'd say right now, I'd bet you there's no way. He will go in the top 10. There's going to be a run on quarterbacks. Quarterback-needy teams will make a move. Now, New England obviously needs a quarterback. Here's my problem with Justin Fields, and I think he's got a ton of talent. He can move like Ryan mentioned. He can get outside the pocket. He's athletic. He can make throws on the move, which you have to be able to do. When he's in the pocket, does he stay too long on his first and second read? And the answer to that question is yes. And that's something you got to do is speed up the clock a little bit. It doesn't mean it can't happen. Josh Allen's improved in that area. Justin Herbert, a lot of people wondered if he could do it. He was quick to acclimate to being in the NFL. So that's the concern with him. But there's no way he's lasting here. And here's the other thing. I'm not so sure in Josh McDaniels' offense that Mac Jones, who doesn't do a lot outside the pocket, isn't a better fit. They had Brady all those years. Brady couldn't move at all, and they structured it around him, and he was perfect for it. Mac Jones has a lot of those qualities. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but the ability to get through his reads quickly and get the ball out. So Mac Jones, for me, might make a better quarterback in New England than Justin Fields.
Pete, what do you think? Does New England use this #1 pick on a quarterback in this draft?
Well, I think they're going to explore their options in free agency. I mean, and trade options. I mean, you got to look at Matt Stafford if you're the Patriots. Obviously, he's a veteran quarterback and still play at a high level. And if I were the Patriots, I'd look. Maybe the Lions would take 15 and give up Matt Stafford, because that's something I would do if I were the Patriots. They have so many other issues. The offensive line, really good. The run game can be good. They have players back there. They have nothing on the outside. Nobody scares. And all we have to do is watch Tyreek Hill play every week and see what a scare player does to a defense. They have nobody like that. So I think trade for Matt Stafford and build the speed around him. That would be a better option.
No, I love that, Pete. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. The problem with the Patriots and wide receivers are they can't even draft the right one. They struggle with that. So maybe sign one in free agency as well. They have all that cap space. I do like the idea of Mac Jones being there at 15 if he is taken, but he just wasn't here in that mock draft. But again, I'm higher on Mac Jones than most people, so that's certainly understandable. We'll see about Justin Fields. I think there's some issues with some of his games. You talked about it, but I think you're right. The athleticism and the upside certainly will probably outweigh that once we get around to the draft.
Okay, let's move into the 20s then in Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft and kind of fill out the board. We still have, well, if you look at the draft, Ryan's predicting a championship for the Chiefs because he has them drafting 32nd and the Buccaneers drafting 31st. But what stands out to me, Packers getting a wide receiver, Rondale Moore out of Purdue at number 29. That would make Aaron Rodgers very happy. And the Buccaneers getting Najee Harris, number 31, the great running back from Alabama. But Ryan, let's go to number 21. And Colts filling that hole left by Anthony Costanzo, who's retiring with Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah, there's Pete's guy right there, and maybe he does go higher. Pete's probably onto something there, depending on what the teams want. But Costanzo's gone. Darrisaw plays with an edge. He's physical and athletic, as Pete mentioned. But now they need a quarterback. You can say wide receiver. T.Y. Hilton's contract's up. They can need help in the back end. Xavier Rhodes' contract is up. But if you're going to start building around whoever the quarterback's going to be, why not get a bookend 10-year, 15-year starter in Christian Darrisaw?
And this pick could go to the Lions for Matt Stafford. I think there's a very real possibility of that as well. I think the Colts will look at this and say, hey, we can get a franchise quarterback and give up this pick. They have a ton of cap room. They can make some additions to help out if Matt Stafford is that guy. They do need a left tackle. There's no question about that. You can get that guy maybe in the second or third round. But I think this pick will end up being traded, at least possibly traded, for Matt Stafford.
And just to fill everybody in, if you missed the very start of this, if you haven't seen Ryan's latest mock, he does have the Lions drafting a quarterback with their first pick in Trey Lance at number 7 overall. As you see what Darrisaw can do, a guy who Pete thinks could be the number 1 offensive lineman off the board. Moving to number 24, Ryan, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, taking a guy with a little bit of injury history.
That's right. Jalen Phillips started his career at UCLA, actually retired in 2018, transferred to the U, and has played out of his mind during the 2020 season. You turn on the U to watch them last season to see Quincy Roche, the other edge rusher, who didn't have nearly the season Jalen Phillips did. He is so much fun to watch. He is built like a defensive end if you got him out of central casting, and he is hard to stop. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The injury histories are concerned. There were some off-field issues that may or not be a concern, but if all that clears, he is a first-round talent, and as Pete mentioned earlier, this isn't a deep edge class, so he has a chance to make himself some money with a strong pre-draft process based on all the good things he did in 2020.
Isn't it funny, though, Ryan, how Greg Russo was the can't-miss guy and then doesn't play, and now he's the one who's dropping down a little bit, and Phillips has moved up a great deal. Here's the concern. You know, we talk about opt-outs and how they don't concern the teams. When a guy retires and then comes back and goes to another school, and there are concerns about that, and I've heard that. So he'll be a case study, a deep study by a lot of teams, but Ryan's right. There's a lot to like there. But where was he, and why wasn't he as productive, and why did he walk away from the game? I think that's all the answers that guys need when they ask those questions, when they do the deep dive on him. But he's got talent.
Pete, I'm going to come right back to you because Ryan has an interesting pick for the Packers with their first pick going with Rondale Moore, the wide receiver out of Purdue. And I know, Pete, you were outspoken today on Twitter about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers kind of cooler heads prevailing here a couple days after the loss.
He wasn't going anywhere. It was the biggest, clickbait myth story out there. The guy was going back. He's the MVP of the league. You came within a whisker of getting to the Super Bowl. Why in the hell would you get rid of Aaron Rodgers, and why would he not want to play there? His legacy is the Green Bay Packers, so it made no sense. But they do need to get him help, and I love this pick. Ryan, this would be a fantastic pick. Rondale Moore is Tyreek Hill. That's who he is. He's that same type of player. He might not have the straight line speed of Tyreek Hill, but a few people do. But it's close. He was clocked at 4.33 in high school, and that tells you how fast he is. He squats 600 pounds. He's a shorter guy, and he's got some ability to make people miss. If you want a toy, and we look at that Packers offense, all those jet sweeps and all that movement, he can become their Tyreek Hill. This would be a great pick by the Packers.
Yeah, typically I've had them taking a linebacker to that position only because they seemed intent on not getting a wide receiver other than Devonta Adams. But I finally gave up after what we saw over the weekend. Aaron Rodgers needs help. Rondale Moore, as you mentioned, provides that help and then some. He can also offer help in the return game. I think you have to finally go after a wide receiver for the Packers.
All right. Mock number 21 in the books for Ryan Wilson. Check out the whole thing on CBSSports.com. Pete, thanks for joining us for this mock. I know he had to kind of twist his arm to come on. We said, hey, let's do a full hour. He goes, nope, half hour and that's it. So that's what we do. Pick Six podcast.
Nope. You're putting words in my mouth. It's because I said when we get going on the draft after the Super Bowl, I'd love to come on every Tuesday and do mock draft Tuesday.
Okay.
But I haven't done my dive in like everybody else has. Ryan's done 27 of them.
You did a good job today, Pete. We're looking forward to doing many more after the Super Bowl. Check out the Pick Six pod, the latest with a gambling angle. Kenny White, the Wizard of Odds, joining the crew.